So what's going on with that scripture today? People building a calf. I think it's not so much that they thought the calf was God, but the calf provided a container, a space, a direction for the anxieties they had at a difficult moment in their lives. They had been in the situation of slavery for a very long time, and now they were wandering through the wilderness. And to add to this anxiety, the one who had structured their journey, Moses, has gone up to the mountains and is delayed in coming back. And they are nervous that there is no leadership. What happens when there is no leadership? Moses and God, of course, are in a sort of leadership summit, conferring on the mountain. But Aaron, down there with the anxieties of the people, does what many would do, which is to step into that gap and to help to provide something that will calm people's fears down. Well, is this the best form of leadership? Maybe not. Maybe it would be better for him to have enabled people to sit and with their anxieties, to name their anxieties, to live with them for a while as they formed a future. But Aaron's specialty is religion, not leadership. And so what he does is construct something around which to put a religion. Meanwhile, Moses is working to connect people to the living, breathing, moving God. I think it's not so different for us. We live in a rapidly changing world, in a time in which we are no longer served by thinking in terms of us and them kind of thinking. Postmodernism plays out in the many, many identities that are brought to the public sphere, and frankly, the many identities each one of us individually bring as we move around in the world. Each of us bring shades of truth and values, which we discover other people bringing other shades of values and truths, and where is the ultimate ones? They are hard to assess in our complex world. Sometimes all those values appear to be in conflict, and sometimes they're even in internal conflict for us. I've been thinking about how this is lived out, and one thought came to mind. For the parents of children and teenagers, valuing the church, while valuing character development provided by things like competitive sports, while valuing opportunities for developing skills to be ready for higher education, while valuing free time for the imagination to flow and young people to play, while valuing family time, puts parents in a hopeless bind. To be sure, some of us grew up where going to church was pretty much the norm. Blue laws kept Sunday mornings separate from other days. Sports were never played or practiced then. Families ate dinner together at 6 o'clock around a table, and kids applied to 3 colleges with fair certainty that they would get into 1 or 2 of those. It's a changed world. And we as a church should not make parents pay for these changes. It's not their fault. Some scholars link the decline in civic organization participation, such as churches, to the advent of the television. That's when it started going down. Others have noticed a tight correlation between the repeal of blue laws and the decrease in church going. Both of those happened long before our current crop of parents. As we are challenged to support the vitality of this church, we are like the Israelites, a little bit in the wilderness, leaving behind the world we once knew, and now we're wandering about trying to figure out what it's like now. So we may want to go, understandably, for those old familiar golden calves to bind our anxiety, such as potlucks, church school, movie nights. So all those things that we experienced when we were younger and church seemed like the center of the universe. What worked just 20 and 40 years ago needs to be reconstructed, we think, and all will be all right. But it's precisely at this moment in history when God tells the people Israel to abandon idols, their old forms of worship, and instead to take God's presence with them in the form of a flexible and living law, in the form of a pillar of fire that goes with them as they move into the new world. And the 23rd Psalm gives precisely the image we need as we navigate into worlds unknown. God relates to us in caretaking and complex way. The shepherd is present, though sometimes at a distance. The shepherd is tending to the pasturing needs, the watering needs of the flock. The shepherd seeks out the lost ones. The shepherd provides gentle correctives. The shepherd keeps the eye on the enemy, and so on and so on. Now, last week when I was in the southern parts of the UK and hiking amidst some hills, sheep were everywhere. I've got lots and lots and lots of photos of sheep. They spread themselves out over the landscape. They played in groups or ate on their own. They nestled with their friends or their young ones. They cast about to see who else to move towards. They kept an eye on us, sometimes moving forward in curiosity and sometimes, more often, moving away. I did not see one single shepherd the whole time. But I saw evidence of their care, the shepherd's care. There were salt licks here and there, watering troughs fully filled, sheep clearly recently shorn, bags of anti-parasitic medications tucked in plastic bins near fences. Evidence of the shepherd's care. And unlike the idol, which requires our moving towards it, the shepherd keeps an eye on the flock wherever the flock needs to go, sometimes leading them to new pastures, sometimes following, sometimes watching closely, sometimes from a distance. In our changing landscape, we may gather here for community care and nurture, but we don't need to come here to find God. God watches us wherever we are in our days. We go out to live lives of private rest and enjoyment, but also of public service and engagement. God watches us and shepherds us as we do that, and we might think of ourselves as shepherds in this community as well. So perhaps our task is to ask how the church might emulate the shepherd, rather than standing like a golden calf just here at this one block in Kennebunkport. How might we think of our building not as the holy location to which we must attract people, but rather as the shepherd's resting and refreshing place before we go out to do our shepherd's work in the community. How might we avoid the temptation to build a static place of religion and rather empower ourselves and each other to know a shepherding God who always is tending to us even when out of sight? And how might we become shepherds in our community?